We don't need another popular word, do we? We need a word that's going to set us free. Listen, I want to hit some areas in our lives, and it may not be any of us in here, but I believe this is a word for those connected to nation. The Creator began to deal with me about significance and self-worth. And he began to talk to me about how many of us struggle in the area of significance and self-worth. And the reason why we struggle in it is because we found our significance and self-worth in things that are outside of us. We don't find the significance and self-worth from that which he has invested inside of us. So what happens is, and this is why some of us are still dealing with some of the sicknesses and diseases we're still dealing with. This is why some of us are still not experiencing a prosperous life. This is why some of us are melancholy in our emotions. We're up and down at times. This is why some of us are still stuck in a rut and we don't understand exactly what's going on with us. It's because what has happened is the enemy has used that open door through our self-worth and through our own struggles with significance to have an open door to attack each and every one of our purposes. Listen, the lack of significance and self-worth have altered our focus. When your self-worth and your significance is misplaced, your focus is off tilt. Now, we all know we've been talking about focus at Bible study and how important focus really is. And focus is very important. It is very important that we remain focused, as we've been talking, focused enough to ignite a fire that consumes everything inside of us that displeases the eternal and provides a guiding light to those that the Creator has connected with our destiny so that they can find him. That's where our focus needs to be generated. But when we struggle with our significance and our self-worth, that hinders that from being able to flow freely. Let's look at the word significance. The quality of being worthy of attention or importance. I want to be honest with you. I want us to be honest today. How many of us honestly feel, now I'm not talking about our church answer, because our church answer in front of everybody is always altered and predicated upon how we want to look before people. But how many of us can honestly say, you don't have to raise your hand, that you struggle in the area of significance and the worth that you have, the worthiness of attention from certain people, and the importance that you may have in the life of individuals? See, that struggle doesn't always, it begins to hurt us at times. Now, self-worth, self-esteem, and self-respect. How many of us, I want to see by raise of hands, how many have real high self-esteem? Like real high self-esteem. How many have real high self-respect? Got you, okay. Now, when we're all tilt with self-esteem and self-respect, we will look for others to give us what we need in the area of self-esteem and self-respect. That's impossible. Just in the word, it's impossible for you to give me my self-esteem and give me my self-respect. That's impossible. And what we've done is many times is we have attempted to find it from the outside instead of from inside. So our self-respect, if you don't have self-respect, I'm going to be real with you. You don't have self-respect, you're going to find yourself doing some things, saying some things, acting out some things, involved in some things that you honestly have a greater value than. And that's where we're at sometimes. But I want us to understand what also this lack of self-respect and significance has done to us. These two things have rocked us to sleep. And it caused us to create a fantasy world that we would rather live in than live in the reality where the Creator can begin to shape and mold our reality and cause us to have purpose and destiny. When we lock ourselves into fantasy, we limit what he's able to do because the Creator does not exist in fantasy, because he created this heaven, this earth, the reality. Who created the fantasy? We do. So now we become our own God in the fantasy world, and that begins to trip us up and hurt us and hinder us from being able to be effective in the real world. Let's look at some things. And I know I'm not screaming, I'm not hollering, but nevertheless, this is a word that's going to pull us out of this. When we live in the fantasy world as opposed to reality, it attacks genuine relationships, causing us to separate from those we need to connect with, and it has us connecting to what and who we need to run from. Every time we live in a fantasy to escape reality, we end up connected to the wrong people. Every single time. It doesn't matter how we do it. We always end up connected to people with familiar spirits or people that mean us no good spiritually. Every time when we're in that fantasy world. The fantasy world will have you sitting in church, and the word that you need to pull you through is being delivered. But you can't even concentrate on the word that's being delivered because you keep escaping back to that fantasy that's trying to hold you hostage. Right now, Creator, I grab each and every one of our minds, Creator, that we will hear this word, and this word will bring us out the way that you desire for us to be brought out. Because there is a plan and a design for each and every one of us. But the plan and design is caught up in the reality that we keep running from. In this fantasy world, only thing that this fantasy world is attempting to do is to cause us to die a slowful death. Because the worst death is not that you don't open up your eyes the next day, but the worst death is that you open up your eyes and you are just like a zombie, just existing. When the Creator has caused us to live and have life more abundantly. Therefore, we have to come out of that fantasy. Here's the second thing it does. It causes us to be caught off guard by things in reality, that if we stop escaping, wouldn't be such a surprise to us. Some of the things that we feel like are catching us off guard, if we stop escaping to the fantasy, then it won't catch us off guard so much because we will be living in the reality of it. Number three, it causes us to drift off and miss principles that could pull us out of situations we are currently in. That's what we're just talking about. It will cause us to miss the one key point. All it takes is a word to pull you out of any situation. I don't care what you're going through. I don't care what it looks like. I don't care what they have said. I don't care how bad it is. All it takes is a word. Every time in the Bible that something was needed, every time in the Bible that there was a problem, every time in the Bible there was something that was going on, only thing that they really did was search for a prophet, for a word. And that word gave them direction, it gave them instruction, and pulled them out of every situation in the midst of our lives. The reason why we're still stuck in situations is because we fell asleep before the word could be delivered for us. The word. We got rocked to sleep. We were concerned about things that's going on outside of here. That sometimes I came up in here and I come in here and I'll be like, okay, I gotta preach. But when I get done, this is going on and that's going on. Oh Lord, what am I gonna do? And I missed my solution. I missed the prophetic word to pull me out. Why? Because I was so concerned with out here and out there that I didn't understand that the Creator had stopped by to address the very thing that was concerning me. Listen, so we find ourselves in war, and many of us are struggling to identify why we are even in war. We don't understand, well, why am I at war? What's going on with me? I don't understand what it is. I don't know what's going on with me. But there is a reality that we've empowered our fantasies so much that we can't even, or we no longer desire to distinguish the difference between fantasy and reality. We don't even want to know the difference anymore. Matter of fact, the reality is we want fantasy to be reality. Because in our fantasy world, everything's easy. We control it. We always come out on top in our fantasy. We always look the best in the fantasy world. We always make the most money. We always have the most cars. We almost have, for some, we have the most women. We have the most men. Everybody wants us. Everybody desires us. We look the best. We sound the best. We talk the best. We sing the best. In that fantasy world, there is no reality of humanity. And we don't like the reality of humanity. Let's look at that word fantasy. An imagined event or sequence of mental images, such as a daydream, usually fulfilling a wish or psychological need. Psychological. The psyche. I want to ask us a serious question. Real talk, let's be real. Because fantasy pulls us in areas to take our mind to a place that we like to go. What is the psychological need or the psychological deficit that you keep trying to fulfill, or we keep trying to fulfill by way of fantasy? What is it? What is it that's really missing? Because I'm going to hit some things that are areas of fantasy that are not really about what we think that they're about. So we have to begin to touch some areas and hit some areas that we don't want to touch, that are very uncomfortable to us, and really realize, okay, wait a minute. You mean I wasn't just escaping to feel good? There's something deeper to this situation. There's something deeper to me feeling as if I don't exist in reality, but in fantasy, I'm just this great, big, supernatural human being. I'm telling you, here we go. Reality, the quality or state of being actual or true. This is why many of us struggle with sicknesses, diseases, and bondage, because we've developed a fantasy world and refuse to come out of it long enough for Elohim to move mightily on our behalf. When this fantasy world first was constructed, it seemed innocent. Just like when little kids, I got an imaginary friend, and people think that that's innocent, but it ends up causing them to communicate and be demons to be able to communicate with them and then indwell them, and we're wondering why they're bound up. We wonder why so many people have lost their minds or in psychiatric homes. We're wondering why those things are going on, and the reality is that when we started, we didn't deal with it. And that's the same thing with our fantasies. We don't start to deal with our fantasies in the beginning, and now they have exploded and caused themselves to become the biggest things in the midst of our lives. In the midst of our lives, they become the biggest thing in our lives. We're so worried about situations that are fine. It's us that are dysfunctional. It's us that need the change. And we're so worried about everything else that's going on, and we don't even realize it. This is the ultimate thing. The thing and those that we're worried about ain't even worried about us. And that's the reality that fights against the fantasy that has been built and developed. It's not even worried about us. Let's move on. Now, as I said, when the fantasy world first was constructed, it seemed innocent because so many things were going on in reality that we desired a break. And that's our problem. We don't desire a solution. We desire a break. If I can just get 10 minutes where I don't have to worry about anything or worry about anybody, if I can just get 10 minutes of peace, I'll be fine. No. I don't want 10 minutes of peace. I want the Creator to break this thing in my life to the point where I don't have to deal with it again. But that's when we're in reality, when we're not captivated by fantasy. Fantasy said, just make me feel good for the moment. Please, can you touch me the right way? Can you stroke me the right way? Can I smoke you to feel good? Can I drink you to feel good? Can you take me out of this present state so I don't have to deal with that which I need to deal with at this moment? That's what fantasy does. It takes us out there. And what we do is, instead of us finding someone qualified to talk to about the pressures and the worries of our lives, we create this fantasy world and decide to escape. When the Creator has set up individuals to minister to you and individuals to cause you to begin to see things in a totally different manner, to cause you to begin to realize, baby, that thing that you're dealing with, you're not the only one that dealt with that. That's not the worst thing that you could do in life. Baby, there is hope. There is deliverance for you. There's healing for you. There's a breakthrough for you. El is still on the throne. Therefore, he can move on your behalf. He can take this very test and turn it into a testimony. He can take that what you're going through and use you to minister to somebody else. But baby, you can't escape the reality of what you're going through. You must face it. Help me, Hashem. Help me face it. Help me face it. Help me face it. Head on. We need to find qualified people. Well, Pastor, I tried that one time. I went to this person. I started talking to this person about some of the things I was going through. And before I know it, they took advantage of me. The first thing I said was finding qualified people. The destructive plan of the enemy is for us to find people that we are attracted to. Whether it be a physical attraction, an emotional attraction, a mental attraction, a psychological attraction, whatever type of attraction the enemy can pull and play on, that's the plan of him to get us to connect with those that we are attracted to. And we have to be real about that thing. And that's what I'm telling you, if we want to get free, we want to experience, I want to be healed. I want to be delivered. I'm tired of going through this. I'm tired of being sick. I'm tired of I'm struggling with this same bondage. I'm tired of drinking. I'm tired of smoking. I'm tired of living in poverty. I'm tired. You might be tired, but you're not hungry enough for change yet. And you're not hungry enough for change until you say, you know what? I'm tired of it, but yet I still love it. I'm tired of it, but my flesh just is drawn to it. I'm tired of it, but it's the only thing that gives me warmth. It's the only thing that makes me feel good for the moment. I'm tired of it, but I like it at the same time. Time. I like it. Apostle, I like it. Now, I know I can't tell you I like it because I'm here at church. So when I get to church, I have to pretend I don't like my bondage. I have to pretend I don't like it so that you can sit here and hick my side and pray for me, and you all out of breath, you all tired, and I'm still standing right there, and my bondage is standing at the back door. So I'll be with you. I'll be waiting on you when you get out here, okay? Because I made you hungry for my deliverance more than I'm hungry for it. Fantasy versus reality. We like fantasy. It makes us feel good. We like fantasy because fantasy causes us to go back to our childhood when we were hurt and we were broken and we didn't get picked for that team and we didn't get picked for that activity and everybody laughed at us in class, and when they called on us we had the wrong answer and people laughed. So now we can go into a fantasy mode and correct all of that in that fantasy world, and we have all the right answers and everybody just loves us and everybody just wants to be around us. Baby, that's not reality. Reality is there are going to be some people that genuinely can't stand your presence, especially if you're going to carry the glory of the Creator. So you need to come up out of that fantasy to understand, I don't care who you think you are, how eloquent you sound, how many demons you cast out, how many people you lay hands on and they're healed. I don't care how many people you prophesy to. There are going to be some people that still can't stand you. Come out of that fantasy and quit thinking that you are going to be loved by everybody. And the reality is, some of the people that can't stand you are the ones that are closest to you. The ones that are closest to you, that can't stand your guts, but they love your bondage. They can't stand who the Creator has called you to be, but they love the side of you that's still bound up. They love that side of you. But the real you, what's up? The real you, they can't stand. And there's a reality of it. Real talk, some of us can't stand the real us. We can't. We can't stand the us that's full of potential. That every time we agree to go forward, all of a sudden we hit some resistance and we mess up and find ourselves right back at the state that we said we never be at again. Let's move on. Let's talk about some of the fantasy worlds that we go into. We all been there. Sometimes our job becomes a fantasy because we don't have any self-worth in who we are. So we work ourselves to death because that gives us some value. If I stay at work long all day and they need me at work, now I feel like I'm somebody because they need me. And so when I come home, nobody needs me. When I come home, nobody likes me. When I come home, nobody wants to be around me. So I have to find my self-worth on my job. So I create a fantasy where I practically live on my job now because that's the only thing that matters to me is my job. Fantasy versus reality. Some of us, the fantasy gets us caught up in drugs. Gets us caught up in alcohol because it becomes our best friend. Real talk, alcohol, I've been there. That was my best friend. Ain't never judged me. It ain't never talk about me. Ain't never talked back to me. And I never had an encounter with it where I didn't feel good at the end of it. Now the next day might be a little messed up, but it always was faithful to me. So what I used to do instead of connecting with people, because people hurt me, people talked about me, people lied on me, people stole from me, people laughed at me, people did all of those things. So I substituted those things for something I knew wouldn't do that to me again. So that's another one that we have. Some people, video games is their escape. I like video games. But if I sit and play video games at the age of 35 all day long, then something is wrong with me. There's a deficit going on inside of my mind because that means I'm trying to escape a reality because now I'm trying to live in this video world, in this fantasy type of a world, and everything's just going to be happy. I'm just going to play Madden all day. I'm going to play this game all day. I'm going to do this all day. But there's a reality that at some point we have to wake up and face some of the things in the midst of our lives. Another fantasy world that we have, individuals. We begin to find our self-worth in them in unproductive and immature relationships. Relationships that don't push us towards purpose and design. Any relationship that doesn't make you better, this is a year you need to cut that cord completely. Any relationship that leaves you deficit, any relationships that leave you or cause you to be in deeper bondage than you are already in, if they causing you more debt, they causing you more heartache, they got you drinking more than you drank, they got you smoking more than you smoke, they got your mind just racing and all over the place, you need to drop it this year. Because those type of relationships will cause you to miss the reality of who you are. They will cause you to live a life where you're just circling the same mountain over and over and over again. And you wonder, is there anything better? Is there anything? Can anything ever change? Or is this my lot? Is this how it's supposed to be? I know my mom was like this. My grandmom was like this. My grandfather was like this. They really had great plans for their life, but it seemed like they just kept getting knocked down and knocked down and knocked down and knocked down. But there's a reality. We have an opportunity to change the route that we are going in. And the reality is it's as simple as when we get ready to go around that mountain this time, change our direction. And I know it sounds very easy to do, but it's not an easy thing to do. It's a process. But what you have to do is get yourself around people that's going to help and push you through that process. Let's move on. Lying sometimes is an escapeful fantasy. There are some people that can tell you the best lies and the best stories, and you'll sit there and be like, for real that happened? Wait a minute, I was there. I know that didn't happen. I was right there with them. And they will create this. And some people, you have to understand the type of liars that you have, because some people just lie to lie. They'll just give you a lie. But there are some people that they are struggling with their self-worth and the value of their life. So in their mind, I have to create this lie because you're not going to like me if I tell you the truth. If I tell you the truth about me, you're going to think it's too boring and too plain. So I got to tell you, yeah, honey, last week I was over in Japan preaching. And the spirit fell. They didn't even use no interpreter. I was speaking Japanese. And you said, wait a minute, you was with me last week. And we use those extremes, but there are people, for real, I'm telling you, their dysfunction causes them to escape from reality. And they live in a fantasy world that they honestly believe. What they're telling you, they 100% believe it to be true. Let's move on here. Now, escaping seems innocent. This fantasy world seems like it's innocent and seems like the right thing to do. But if your escaping causes you to float away, and when you return, you still don't deal with the issues that you need to deal with in the midst of your lives, then that's causing you to create a fantasy world that's killing your reality. It's killing your reality. And you don't need to allow that to kill your reality. That, with a fantasy like that, it would always leave you stagnant, stuck in a rut, and leave you immature, lacking the needed problem-solving skills to develop and advance your life. There are certain problem-solving skills that each of us need at each area of our life. And those problem-solving skills will determine the direction in which our life goes. So when problems and situations come up, if we keep escaping in the fantasy world and we're using old problem-solving strategies, then what's going to happen is we're going to keep dealing with situations the same way over and over and over again. But if we will live in reality long enough to connect with some people in reality, they can teach us some new skills that will begin the momentum in a new direction for us to see the change that we desire in our lives. So it starts as a momentary thing that felt good to the flesh. Many of us, it started as a simple weight and now has developed into something that we call sin, because it separates us from the Creator in the midst of our lives and keeps the door open for sickness, diseases, and other bondages that we may struggle with. All right? Our flesh and the enemy realize that if they can keep us distracted, they can keep us bound. If you remain distracted by anything, you always end up losing information that you need. If right now somebody came and they was running by that door and there was a whole bunch of noise, I might be giving a principle that you need right then and there. And if you don't have, if you're not, or if you're easily distracted, you'll miss out on what's being said. And that will be the plan of the enemy. The plan of the enemy is to distract us at the moment, right that one moment, because I'm telling you, all it takes is one word and one moment to shift you into a new dimension of your life. I guarantee you, if you hear a word, just one word, you take that word, eat that word, apply that word to your life, it will cause a perpetual moment that will change everything in the midst of your life. One word. But when we get hungry enough for it, it doesn't matter who attempts to distract us, we remain focused to the whole process. When we're hungry for something, as I was talking about earlier, when I'm sitting down at the table, nobody can distract me because I like to eat. Especially if the meal is good. You're fine. Especially if the meal is good. I like to eat. So you can try to play all in my face. You can try to talk to me. You can try to do any of those things. If it's food on that, especially if it's pizza. You like pizza, young man? Yeah, I like pizza too. I'm not going to be distracted by anybody when it comes to pizza. That's the same way we need to be when it comes to the word of the Creator. When that word is going forth, I don't care who calls, whatever's going on. I refuse to be distracted by what's going on. And when we get that, I guarantee you our life, I'm telling y'all, I'm not trying to give anybody a false hope to make you think that, oh yeah, it's just cookies and cream and butterflies and rainbow, and we're going to leave out of here and everything's going to be different and everything's going to change. No, baby, you're going to leave out of here and you're going to face some opposition. The difference is this time that when you leave out of here, you have some better principles to deal with that opposition that you're facing, and you'll be able to put that opposition in the right place to deal with it in the right time. And now that thing that used to control you, now you find yourself controlling. It started out cool because it convinced us that we are in control while controlling our every move and disguising itself as an illusion of us being in control. When we first started escaping to fantasy, it was like we could turn it on and off when we wanted to. Something go on, all right, that's fine, let me escape to that fantasy world. But then all of a sudden, as time went on, and we built that world, and we built a whole town in that world. We got stores there. We got family there. We got friends there. We got everything we want and need in that world. And now we find ourselves there more than we are here in reality, because now that thing controls us. And when we don't want to escape, we still find ourselves escaping because it makes us feel good. It makes us feel good. We're going to get free though. We're going to get free. That's where the fantasy world started at. Because I know y'all was like, he ain't went to a scripture yet. Genesis chapter 3. That's where the fantasy world started at. Genesis chapter 3. We was in the garden. In the cool of the day. Chilling in the garden. Got all types of trees. All kind of food. They got pizza and french fried trees. You like french fries too? Yeah, I like french fries too. They had all kind of trees. The creator said, you guys can eat from this tree. Everything you want, you can have. Just don't touch that one. Don't touch that one tree. That's us. Us today. He tells us, listen, I have a great plan for your life. If you hold on just a little while longer, all the financial resources that you need, I'm going to get you those resources. But here's what we did. Here comes the serpent. Now remember back then, the serpent didn't slither around. He had legs. He walked. He was standing up. Here he comes to her. And he said, surely you won't die if you eat of that tree. You're not going to. And you know as good as God is, he ain't going to kill you if you eat of that tree. Now, this is some of us. Let's be real. Some of us are always looking for another option to get it quicker, faster, and in a hurry. We want, Elohim says, I got you on a 10-year plan. We want a 10-minute plan because we done went through long enough. I've been in the same struggle long enough, so I want a 10-minute deliverance. And he said, listen, I got a 10-year plan for you. I just need you to calm down and relax enough to understand that after this 10 years, you're going to see the changes. Throughout this 10 years, you're going to see the changes. But after that 10 years, it's going to catapult you to another level. But we don't want to wait for that. Oh, no. So we find, here comes this voice that sounds good to us. Because some of us, y'all know, a good voice, we love a good voice. Any voice that sounds good gets our attention. No matter what they're saying, they'll get our attention. If they can put their words together, it will get our attention. That's how some of us get tricked in presidential debates and different things like that, because they sound so good. It sounds so persuasive. Like, man, I don't know what they talking about, but you know what? I'm voting for them. And we don't even realize we just gave away our life from the very eloquent words that they speak. That's what we do. So he tells her, you know, he convinces her. Now keep in mind, here's the crazy thing about it. She already had an encounter with God that completely changed her life. He created her. She had an encounter with him. However, the voice was so influential at that moment that voice excelled the experience she had with the Creator. Don't you ever allow a voice to have more influence in your life than the experience you had with God. Don't ever, I'm telling you, because you'll find yourself. Now, here's the thing about that with that tree. It never said that it was the Creator's plan that it was not the Creator's plan to eventually teach them and allow them to eat from that tree. But they prematurely ate from that tree. That's the same thing going on with us when we keep escaping to fantasy. It causes us to prematurely experience things that we are not qualified for yet. Yet. He didn't say he was not going to do it. He did not say he was not going to deliver. He didn't say he wasn't going to supply. Matter of fact, he said, I will supply all of your need according to my riches in glory. Therefore, we know he's going to supply. We know he's going to deliver. We know he's going to make a way. However, it's the process that we keep struggling with and keep fighting against. And fantasy will have you fighting against the process so much that you will find yourself in a worse state than you were in the beginning. When they finished, they ate of that tree. Now Elohim comes. He curses the serpent. He curses the woman, and he curses man because they refused. Not because she listened to him, but because she refused to be patient in his process. Don't lose out because you're not patient in his process. Question for us all. Are we making decisions that will make our children, whether spiritual or natural, lives harder or easier? Are the decisions that we're making right now, is that making our children's lives harder or easier? And there's a reality. Listen to this. Because the bondages that we play with time to time, and I'm talking about those of us that are at a place where we can get the deliverance that we need. We can get the healing that we need. We're playing with bondages, and it's opening up doors for our children and our children's children to have to suffer and struggle harder with some of the things that we are suffering and struggling with now. So now we birth these children and we're wondering, well, why does he talk back so much? Why won't he listen to nobody? Why is he doing this? Why is she doing that? The reality is we have to begin to look at our relationship with God. And we have to look, are we talking back to him? Are we not listening to him? Are we doing things that does not bring glory, honor, and praise to him? What are we doing for this next generation? And I'm going to tell you this. If we keep escaping to a fantasy world, we're not doing much for the generation. A fantasy world will cause us to settle for less than what the Creator has designed for us because it wants it right now. We are a generation that wants right now. I don't care what anybody says. I want it right now in a hurry. I don't care who it costs. I don't care who has to be sacrificed for it. I want it right now. Put it on my table right now. Well, sir, it wouldn't benefit you right now if you didn't have it. Well, I like it. I love it. I like the way it looks. I want it now. And that mentality is hurting us because the older generation, they work hard for everything. I remember watching my grandmother. My grandmother, she had, I think, about a 10th grade education, but she worked hard for everything she ever got. I never saw her broke. We didn't never not have food in the house. I watched the principles that they have, and what scares me about this generation is we lack that principle. We lack the principle of stewardship even when it seems like it's a famine. Because when a famine hits, we're affected by it. That generation wasn't. They worked hard. They really worked hard, but they always had money. They always had substance. They always had an encouraging word. They always had something to give you, to push you to move on and continue on in what he had called you to do. Number two, it causes us to be attracted to and to attract the wrong things or create the wrong type of relationships with those people. What fantasy will do, it will cause us to be attracted to the wrong people. And it will cause us to attract the wrong people. Because when we live in fantasy, we're not who we really are. So when you're not really who you are, you give a presentation to somebody and that person is mesmerized by your presentation. But the reality is they can't stand you and you can't stand you. Let's move on. Number three, causes us to go after what in reality we cannot have and should not desire. It perverts the state of our attractions. It perverts it in a manner that we're not attracted to anything that produces anything productive. We're not attracted to it. It causes us to go into fantasy mode to get it or them. And once we've trapped it or them, Now the reality is that we don't want them and they don't want us. That's the reality of it. And so now in order to keep them, we have to sacrifice our joy, life, ministry, career, sanity, reality for a false sense of happiness. Well, at least I got somebody. You know, at least I got somebody. It doesn't really matter if they really like me or not. At least I got somebody. You know, at least somebody loved me. Let's go on. False sense of happiness. Listen at the definition of false sense of happiness. An attempt to merge fantasy with reality. That's impossible. Light and dark can't mix without one becoming dominant. Truth and a lie can't exist together because once a lie is thrown in, it cancels the truth. And if it starts with a lie, when truth shows up, it smashes that very fabric of the lie. These extreme opposites can't function together. Therefore, you find yourself in a virtual reality, attempting to convince yourself, others, and your new gods that everything is all right. When in all actuality, reality is screaming for you to allow it to be free, and fantasy just wants to be released to run wild. So when are we going to become hungry enough for the Creator that we rise above the world system of survival and success, and we begin to tap into kingdom principles of success, prosperity, posterity, from family, from generation to generation, and favor? When are we going to break free of the delusion of fantasy, allowing us to be who Elohim originally created us to be? Because there was an original state that he had for us. There was an original state of prosperity, original state of functioning, an original state of not just existing but living that he has for us. But we can never get back there until we are ready to rid ourselves of the fantasy. Or are we still afraid that if we evolve into the real us, it will reveal the lie of who we've been and also reveal the lies we've been telling other people? Are we afraid that the real us will be so rejected by those that are around us that we're willing to settle for the us that we become now? Or the second one, or are we afraid of who we may lose? Some of us are afraid of who we may lose. Therefore, we won't step up and be who he's called us to be. We're afraid that we just might lose them because of the stand that is necessary for growth and development. And the reality is, anybody that won't shift and move with you, you need to let them go. You need to let them go. Now let's look at this, and I'm almost done. I want to talk about the issue because I hear this all the time, and this keeps people away from church. This has been one of the most religious statements, and it kills me to hear it all the time. Holiness is right. Now, don't get me wrong, holiness is right. However, the holiness and the definition that they have placed it is not the actual definition of what holiness is. Most people look at holiness. When we grew up, there was like long skirts, stuff all the way up here to the neck, and if everything was covered up was what was defined as holiness. Let's go to Leviticus 11 and 44. And it reads, "For I am the Lord your God, so consecrate yourself and be holy, for I am holy." Now, if we look at that definition, some of these people have been some of the biggest liars in the world, have preached holiness as if it's not attainable by the natural man. And there's a reality. Without the Creator, without God, we can't obtain it. But the same holiness that I can live, every single one of us in here can live. But it's a process. It's not that you're going to stand up here and say, "God, I give you my life today," and then all of a sudden, now you're transformed, and now you're holy, and now everybody watching, you say, "Well, wait a minute, you got saved yesterday. Why are you cussing?" You know, that's how people do. They don't understand the process of it. But the reality is, in order for us to be holy, to be set apart, to be separate, to show ourselves different, 1 Peter 1, 15 through 16. "But as the one who called you is holy, yourself also be holy in all your conduct and manner of living. Therefore, talking about your behavior, your speech, all of those things. Be holy in those things. But before we can be holy, there's a reality that we have to escape the fantasy. Because the fantasy world fights against that holiness. For so long we have heard preachers and have been preachers crying for holiness. And we have drawn the conclusion that many people don't want to live holy. That's not true in every case. There are some that just don't want it. There's a reality. Some just don't want it. I was at a place before, I just didn't want it. I wasn't ready for it. That's a reality. I was not ready for it. All right? But some have made up their minds to do any and everything. However, there is another side of the story as well. There's a reality that there can be no holiness until there is wholeness. You can. We've been talking the last 2 weeks. Will thou be made whole? That's a reality. Will you be whole in your mind, in your spirit, in your soul? Every part of you, are you willing to be made whole? And when you are made whole, it takes you back, as Apostle was talking about last week, to the original state that the Creator made you in. Wholeness means, Creator, I'm going to be real with you right here, right now. There's some things about me that are just nasty. There's some things I will cuss people out in a minute. I will lie in a minute. I like to drink. I like to smoke. I like to do all of those things, Elohim. I'm bringing that before you right now. I want you to know I am imperfect. But with you, you can make me whole. Wholeness will cause you to stop hiding from the one that can rescue you and start exposing yourself to him. See, there's some deep-rooted things in all of our lives that we've been through. And sometimes there's some things we don't want to revisit. But the reality, in order for us to be whole, for all the pieces of us to be put back together, there are some things that have happened from childhood on up that we have to revisit. Because if we don't revisit those things, there are pieces of us that are still attached to those situations. If there were situations that happened in your childhood, and there were for me, before I really got healed, before I really got delivered, there were some things that happened in my childhood that if it was brought up, I could break down and cry because I could relive it like it just happened yesterday. If there are things in our lives that still have that weight in the midst of our lives, they still have that influence in the midst of our lives. When at certain times of the year it comes up, and when it comes up, it begins to pull and pull on our soul. It begins to pull and pull on our spirit. It begins to hurt us as if it's ripping us apart once again. Those are the very things that we have to begin to go back and get in order for us to be whole. Because there were some things, as I said, that happened with our childhood. It may have been a death that took place in your life. For me, many years after my mom passed away, I only existed. I didn't live, and I had to go back to my mother's death and pick my life back up to decide that I'm going to live. Yes, it hurt. Yes, she was one of the most influential people in the midst of my life. But if I'm going to leave a legacy like the legacy that she left, I have to live beyond that situation. Some of us, in order for us to move forward out of this fantasy world, we have to go back to the reality. And the reality is this: there are some people that we have to release. There are some things that we have to release. And there are some things that are attached to us that we have to say, be released. We have to do those things because there are pieces of you. It's like a puzzle put together. And as I'm looking right now, I can see some of us, as we're putting the puzzle together, there are gaps in the puzzle. And those gaps are from areas of our lives that pain us the most, that we don't want to revisit. But the only way that we can be made whole is if we begin to go on a journey back down memory lane and allow the Creator to look inside of us and go through those areas of pain and begin to heal every single area of our lives. Everyone standing on your feet. I make no apologies today. We didn't preach a message with screaming and hollering. However, I want us to understand that as long as there's breath in your body, there is yet hope for you. I don't care what anybody may have said, what anybody thinks. where anybody may have called you, what you may have even called yourself, there is hope for you. The Creator desires to dig deep inside of you and show you who he really, number one, who he really is, and number two, who he's really created you to be. But the question remains, are we willing to allow him to begin the process? And I know the process is scary. It's scary because there were some things that some of us went through, we didn't tell anybody about it. We said we take that to the grave. But the problem with that is, and I know it's scary to trust people, but the problem with I'm going to take it to the grave is that always keeps us attached emotionally to a grave, which is hindering us from being able to live. Now, I'm not saying just go out here and you just blurt out to everybody, listen, this happened. No. I'm saying the first step, and you might say, well, I got to tell God that he knows what happens. But what he wants to know is, do you trust me with the most intimate parts of your life? Even though I know what happens, I want to hear you communicate to me what happens. And then after you communicate that to him, then you ask him, who can you trust? Who is it, God, that I can go to and I can begin the process of opening up so that I can be healed? And in essence, me being healed, now my children that have been struggling with some bondages in the midst of their lives, that they've kept locked up and they kept hidden, now they can begin to release some of those bondages in the midst of their lives, so that when their children come and their children come and their children come, they will understand, I don't have to live like this. Everyone lifting your hands. Father, we thank you. I thank you for each and every one of us on today, Creator. Right now, Hashem, I ask that as the word has gone forth, that each and every one of us, we've admitted, Creator, that there's some fantasy that we ran to. There's some things we ran to in hopes that it would give us the love that we needed, in hopes that it would give us the relief that we needed. But today we run to you, Creator. And we ask now that you will begin the healing process in the midst of our lives, Creator. Go deep inside of us everywhere, Creator. Everywhere that is hid and lodged now, I pray that your Holy Spirit will shine light on it, Creator. And the power and the influence that it has in the midst of our lives, I strip it of the power now. As a spiritual father, Creator, I cover everyone in this house right now. And I cover them as a spiritual father, Creator. And I speak to their spirit. And I command life to flow and flow abundantly now. Every area of pain, every area of frustration, every area of hurt, every area of misunderstanding, every area of misdirection now. We loose your healing virtue now, Creator. Begin a process, Creator, that doesn't just affect those of us that are here, Creator, but let it affect every generation that's represented here, Creator, that our children will not have to struggle with the things that we've had to struggle with. They won't struggle with the things that we have hidden and kept secret, Creator. Guard our hearts, guard our children's hearts right now. Have your way in the midst of our lives, Creator. Begin to break even soul ties, Creator, that we made with failure, the soul ties that we made with sickness, soul ties we made with things that were counterproductive to your will. Break those soul ties right now, Creator. The voices that attack us in our sleep, that attack our mind, Creator, that continue to war against that which we attempt to establish in the midst of our lives, Creator. Destroy it now, Creator. I silence the voice now. I silence the destructive voice now that continues to hinder and bind the flow of your spirit, that attempts to hinder and bind understanding and revelation and wisdom, Creator. I pray now that a hunger for your word will be ignited in our spirit right now, that as we begin to eat your word, Creator, the more we eat your word, Creator, the more deliverance will be real for us. Set the stage for deliverance now. I bind every demonic force and every demonic spirit. I bind it for a season, that a conscious decision may be made to serve you, that after that conscious decision has been made to serve you, that the atmosphere will be conducive for deliverance to take place. And when deliverance begin to take place, Creator, that we will never be the same. I decree it by faith right now. I break now generationally poverty and lack. I break it now in the name of Yeshua. I break the vagabond spirit now in the name of Yeshua. I bind the wandering now in the spirit and in the natural, Creator, and I light a fire, a blaze of fire now to the path that today will begin a new day. Today will begin a new direction, Hashem. I decree it by faith now in the name of Yeshua. I praise you right now, Creator, and I call it done in the name of Yeshua. We pray and we say amen. Can I just touch and agree with you? Father, right now, everything that she has before you, Creator, I got you next.